Hello,
Right.
welcome back. As you should all know by now, I'm Ciaran, this is Dennis. Our next guest is Dr. Ciaran O'Keeffee, and he will be doing, I shall introduce him, and then he will be doing a short presentation for us, and then we will put your questions forward to him. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Hi, Ciaran. Hi, Dennis.
Right.
And how are you?
I'm all right. I've got a bit of a cold. You might be able to hear in my voice, so I'll battle through. I've got
Oh,
tissues
bless you.
and everything, but I'll
You're
be fine.
prepared. Oh, bless you.
All prepared,
You're going to do
yes.
a short presentation for us, aren't you?
Yes, I'll just do like 10,
You're-
15 minutes introduction to myself and kind of parapsychology, and then law.
Okay, well, I shall put your presentation up and I shall remove ourselves and turn our mic off and I'll leave you to take it away. Thank you very much.
Fabulous. Thank you very much, Ciaran and Dennis. First of all, for that introduction, but also for inviting me. Lovely to see all of you joining us this afternoon for this fabulous parathon, and people that have tuned in to see me. This is brilliant. The title of my introduction is Back Off Man, I'm a Scientist, and that'll become clear in a minute. But it's about researching the weird and wonderful. So in terms of my background and who I am, I'm a parapsychologist, and I wanted to just spend a few minutes clarifying exactly what that means, because often a parapsychologist is seen as somebody who is a ghost hunter. And whilst this scene, but also this film has been my biggest influence, I am a parapsychologist. That's my day job, but also at my heart, I'm also a ghostbuster. But let's talk a little bit about parapsychology and what it is. Parapsychology is the scientific study of the paranormal, and it covers three areas: sensory perception, PK, and then after death survival, or some people call it after death communication. But there are three areas of study in parapsychology: ESP, PK, and then after death communication. ESP is a general term that actually covers three abilities: telepathy, precognition, and clairvoyance. Telepathy is mind-to-mind communication. Precognition is predicting the future. And the vast majority evidence that we get for precognition is prophetic dreams, that is, dreams of the future. Clairvoyance, and this is a term you might have heard already actually in some of the talks, and you will hear over the course of the next 35 hours or so. Clairvoyance is often referred to as an ability that mediums have, kind of this ability to see spirit. But actually, clairvoyance in parapsychology is the ability to see without our known senses. So a way of describing that, or a way of illustrating that, is if you did a drawing and put it in an envelope and asked me to work out what it was, I might use a clairvoyant ability to see the drawing in an envelope. The difficulty is, if I get it right, is that clairvoyance or is it telepathy? So you did the drawing, so therefore did I get the drawing from your mind? But also I might have had a dream about it the night before, a precognitive dream. When you asked me to think about the drawing, I might have remembered that dream and put the drawing down. So that's why we use the term ESP. It's a collective term to cover all of these abilities, because sometimes you can't tell the difference between them. Psychokinesis, on the other hand, is the movement of an object with the mind, and most people know of that because of individuals like Uri Geller, who claims that he can bend spoons with his mind. And just a little aside, actually, first ever Most Haunted shoot was the Black Swan Devises in Wiltshire, where I turned up and Uri Geller was a guest there. And somebody went up to him and said, can you bend this spoon for me, Yuri? And he said, well, I don't want to bend a spoon. I'm here to investigate this haunted location with the most haunted crew. I don't want to be known as the man that can bend spoons. And I thought, well, it's a bit late now, because that's really all you're known for, is bending spoons. And I should know, because I got him to bend one for me, and got him to sign one as well. So that's my Uri Geller spoon, which I'm very proud of. The psychokinesis, that's actually an example of what we call macro PK. So you can see it bending, or see the alleged phenomena bending, the same way that people standing around a table in a haunted environment trying to get the table to move, is that the spirits, or actually is it some sort of group PK? But either way, you can see the table move, you can see the spoon being bent, so it's macro PK. Micro PK we can't see, and that's when you affect things that you need measuring equipment to see. So a good example would be if you affect the growth of plants or of vegetables, or there was some research that was done about 20 years ago now, trying to get people to affect the decay of radioactive material. That would be micro PK. Psychokinesis is also of interest to parapsychologists because of poltergeist phenomena. So some of you may know the term poltergeist. In some areas of parapsychology, there are people who think that poltergeist phenomena is not from the spirit, but is actually from here. It's actually from the person themselves causing that phenomena to happen. They call it recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis. The other area of study is after-death communication. And the vast majority of this comes from hauntings and mediumship. So those are the two areas of study within after-death communication. And that's it for parapsychology. You'll find some fringe areas look at near-death experiences, maybe a little bit of reincarnation, but certainly it's not the whole of the paranormal. It's just three particular parts. And the majority of parapsychologists, I would argue, are probably involved in ESP research. There are very few of us in the world involved in hauntings or even after-death communication research generally. But my interest in parapsychology stems from years and years and years and years, even to a boyhood fascination with the paranormal. So much so that I'm fascinated also by, my upbringing as a Roman Catholic, good Roman Catholic boy, and then later renouncing the faith, but actually being brought up as a Roman Catholic boy and introduced to Christian parapsychology, this idea of paranormal phenomena within a religious context. So I've advocated and crusaded for the term Christian parapsychology to be changed to religious parapsychology, and that is where phenomena occurs across any sort of religion, and things like levitation, stigmata, possession, which involves exorcisms as well. And in reference to the comment that's just come up from Christopher, it feels as though I've been possessed by the demon of cold, so I do need to get the Lemsip out and take care of that. But my fascination of my two areas of expertise actually come from religious parapsychology and also hauntings. I love hauntings. I love the idea of ghosts. As a parapsychologist, I'm fascinated by it, but also in my heart, I am a ghostbuster and I love going out ghost hunting. In parapsychology, we define hauntings like this: sensory experience in which there appears to be present a person or animal who is in fact out sensory range of the experience. That sounds kind of convoluted and academic, but actually drilling down, the reason why I put this definition there is because it's to say hauntings can be anything. They don't have to be just seeing a ghost. They can be the sense of presence, or being touched, or the smell, or just a sense of what's going on. So it could be a lot more than that. And as a parapsychologist, I'm very interested in the role of the environment, and that's a whole slew of different things, whether it's temperature, infrasound, geomagnetic, or EM fields. It really doesn't matter. There's a whole variety of possible explanations. So the role of the environment. Also, I'm interested in the role of the mind, the psychology of what goes on with an individual in a haunted location, suggestion, states of mind, belief, that sort of thing. you know, my psychology colleagues are always saying, well, look, if you tell somebody a place is haunted, they're going to have an experience simply because it's haunted. And what they're talking about is, if you go into a haunted location, you feel a breeze, are you going to be looking for the open window or the open door, or are you going to be thinking that there's a ghost behind you? And that's what psychology colleagues think is going on. But from my perspective, I know that a lot of ghost hunters, they do actually start looking for the open window and the open door and that sort of thing. So it's a lot more complex than that. But I'm interested in that, and it's as a result of my area of expertise that I got involved in paranormal media. Excuse me. I got involved in paranormal media. Actually, Most Haunted was not the first show that I was involved in. The first show that I was involved in was Jane Goldman Investigates, even a few years before Most Haunted. Fantastic show based in the UK. For those that people who don't know Jane Goldman, who are tuning in from across the water or other parts of the world, Jane Goldman is actually the writer of the movie Kick-Ass and also some of the X-Men films as well, but also she wrote the official guide to the X-Files. In the UK, we know her as equally that screenwriter. She's also the wife of Jonathan Ross, who's a big celebrity in the UK. But she is a fantastically knowledgeable person when it comes to the paranormal, and that was my first experience doing paranormal, working on her show. And then I got the Most Haunted gig, which I won't go into now. We can talk about it in the chat. And then various other shows that I've been part of over the years. And I am incredibly grateful, both for my kind of boyhood fascination with Ghostbusters and effectively now being a Ghostbuster. I could not be happier in terms of the role that I have now and the research that I do now. But also I can't be happier because of the opportunities it's afforded me and kind of put me into the paranormal media world. And it means therefore that as a result of my parapsychology research, I've had access to locations that are just to die for, to use a pun. Hampton Court Palace, for example, where I lived for 2 weeks. It's a hard life. It does sound very glamorous. I actually slept on a floor for 2 weeks at Hampton Court Palace, but it was a lovely experience investigating there. Hellfire Caves, have investigated there many, many times. I know you've got Barry coming on at some point later on as part of Festival of the Unexplained. He's going to be on a little bit later. He's probably investigated it more than I have, but I investigated back when I was 16 years old, so however many decades ago. And also various amazing locations when I go on media and television shows, his kind of Dracula's Castle, for example, and there are loads. Eastern State Penitentiary as well. Some of you will know that my research is about the science side as well as being a ghost hunter or ghostbuster, but I'm also very interested in paraethics. So a quick plug for Haunted Magazine, of course, which is part of Festival of the Unexplained. So I'm talking a lot about paraethics. I'm doing a lot of writing about it, but also in terms of my future projects, there will be a book about paraethics and a website coming out. I'm also doing lots of work on exorcism stuff. So I'm doing an article on demonic possession, for example, and also I'm doing some research on virtual reality and the use of virtual reality in trying to understand fearful responses to haunted locations. So I'm sending people through a virtual haunted house, hooking them up to what we call physiological measures. So the key 3 indicators of fear will be increase in heart rate, lung capacity, and what's called electrodermal activity, or sometimes referred to as galvanic skin response, basically your sweat response. So these are the 3 indicators that you're being fearful in a particular location. And what I'm doing is sending people through a virtual reality environment, and I'm adjusting stuff like the height of the ceiling, the lighting, the number of doors, the sounds, various things to find out, well, what is it exactly that makes people the most fearful. And then I've got another line of research looking at eye tracking as well, but I won't go into that because I don't want to give too much about that away. But I can always talk about that in the Q&A. So that's a quick whirlwind tour of me and kind of giving you a flavour of what parapsychology is, and kind of giving you a flavour of why this is one of my favourite phrases. Back off, man, I'm a scientist. A classic quote from the movie Ghostbusters. But for anybody that knows me and anybody that knows any of my research and any of my ghost hunting adventures, they'll know that back off, man, I'm a scientist is the last thing that I would ever say. Because as a scientist, I will do the research, but it is about me sharing that research in the same way that I know that whilst I still go out in the field and ghost hunt, a lot of my time is spent in the lab and writing and doing research. And actually, I want to hear from ghost hunters as well. So the last thing I would ever say is, back off, man. I'm a scientist. If anything, I'd say, yep, I want to hear more. So that's me. That's parapsychology. And that's the end of my short presentation. Over to you. Any questions?
Hello, and thank you very much. We have
Right.
lots of questions.
Oh, brilliant.
Okay, I have to go back up the screen. Bear with me just a moment. I don't want to miss anyone. Okay. That was very interesting. And I remember the Jane Coleman show. I remember that. It was quite a long time ago now.
It was a long time ago. In fact, I think it was, I'm reminded, 2005. Yeah, about 15 years ago.
No, I didn't realise it was that long ago.
Yeah.
Blimey.
Oh, yeah. 15, maybe even 16 years ago. Yeah. Wow.
Right. We've got some of our own questions, but I'll get onto the comments and the questions in the comments.
Okay.
Steve Higgins.
Hi, Steve. Higgy Pop.
Higgy Pop. Twice in one day. Hi, Ciaran. Do you think EVPs are genuinely the voices of spirits, or could they be the result of ESP, the mental projection of the investigator's own thoughts being transferred onto the recording? Well, that's an interesting question.
That's an interesting question. And also, Steve is being very clever there by restricting me to a choice of two. Are they the voice of spirits, or are they the results of ESP? He's not giving me any possible space for me to say that it's anything else. So my answer to that would be yes.
I like
because you're only giving me a choice between those two. But I think it's a fascinating question. You know, you're saying, are they genuinely the spirit voices on EVPs? It's a tough one from a parapsychology point of view, because we're very skeptical of EVPs generally, although we recognize that actually there has been about 70 years, if not longer than that, actually, I would argue 80, 90 years of EVP research. You know, even before Konstantin Raudive and kind of his work and Breakthrough and various other individuals, there have been lots of well-known scientists kind of looking into radio and the messages coming through various radio devices and that sort of thing. So I think it's a fascinating area of research. I think what Steve more so has touched upon there is the complexity of the paranormal. That, you know, if there's anything to any of the phenomena that's produced, it could be any number of paranormal explanations. That's the difficulty, but that's also the fascination with the paranormal. It could be spirits, or it could be projection, the same way ghosts could actually be the same. Are they actually manifestations of spirit, or is it some sort of ESP projection? We're seeing it in our mind, but it's so real that actually it feels like it's in front of us. So thanks for that question. Lovely. Good start.
Kelly just made a comment saying she's been watching you for years on TV.
That's lovely. Thank you very much. I just want to say hi to everyone. There's loads of people. I'm just looking here.
Lots and lots of people saying hello.
Loads of people. Paula, Karen, Lorianne, Jenny, Sarah, Trudy, Paula, Tracy, D, Rach, Amanda. Hi, Amanda. Steve. Loads of people. Alex. Wow. Lovely to see you all.
Okay. John wants to know, could you tell us about your own parapsychology courses and how much
are they? Okay, yes. So I had quite an active online school called the School of Parapsychology. You can find that now on the schoolofparapsychology.equid.com. ecwid.com. Ecwid is spelled ECWID.com. So the School of Parapsychology.ecwid.com. I used to do a lot of parapsychology courses on there. The difficulty is my timetable. I just don't have the time to do some of the longer courses. So I've got a couple of short courses on there now. One of them is just kind of a ghost hunting. It's a bespoke course. When people sign up, I do individual tutoring. It's not group tutoring, it's individual tutoring, one-to-one. That is, I think, £25, but it's just one-to-one tutoring with me about ghost hunting and about parapsychology of ghost hunting, history of it, that sort of thing. The other one that I do is about exorcisms and possession. That's a particularly in-depth one. A little bit more, but not much more, maybe about £30. But again, that's one-to-one, and I go through kind of the history of it, scientific explanations, but also we speak to exorcists, that sort of thing. So yeah, I'm particularly proud of those. So a religious parapsychology course, and then kind of a straight parapsychology course, if that's the right expression, a ghost hunting course. So check that out. What I will do, actually, I'll do that now. So I'll add a discount if anybody Festival of the Unexplained discount. So I'll do that now.
Oh, thank you very much.
While we're chatting.
That's it. Dennis is on it now. He's already just said, right, I'm signed up for that. When he's there.
Superb.
Thank you very much for doing that. It's appreciated.
That's all right, no problem.
Got quite a long question for you as the next one from Amanda.
Okay.
Do you think that digital equipment gets better results than old style equipment, e.g. an EVP recorder or versus a tape recorder with cassette tape? We had some interesting voice phenomena on cassette that a digital machine didn't pick up. Oh, that's interesting.
It is very interesting, and I think, hi Amanda, nice to see you. Been a while. I think what's lovely about that question is it's tapping into the difference between old versus new. We're in a position where, as ghost hunters now, even for me, kind of 30, 35 years on, stuff is affordable. So this equipment is affordable. It's incredibly portable. So it's brilliant. The issue is, especially with digital recorders, is you find that actually they're reducing the spectrum of sound that we're listening to. So they're compressing the sound files. With the original reel-to-reel and cassette, of course, we have a wider spectrum. We're not going off into infrasound, which is low frequency sound, and ultrasound, which is high frequency sound. That's not, you use specialist equipment for that. It's not that. But if you think kind of a reel-to-reel might be having a spectrum that we'll listen to like that in terms of low sound to high sound, a digital recorder, so kind of a dictaphone or just any sort of digital recorder, the sound will be compressed and it'll be like that. So we'll be missing all of that sound at the top and the bottom. So for that reason, maybe better results with older style is the right way of putting it, because you're missing potentially some of the that audio at the top and the bottom. So yeah, good question.
Cool. Right, another question here for you. What is your favourite piece of equipment?
That's a tough question, because actually my favourite piece of equipment is a thermal imager. That genuinely is my favourite piece of equipment, only because I'm a huge fan of Predator. Do you remember the Arnold Schwarzenegger film?
Yeah.
Huge fan of that. And of course, when they're looking at some point, they're looking at Predator. They're looking at him flying through the trees, and you see that kind of colour image. They're kind of tracking, and he's looking at them, and he can see kind of the heat signatures. And whenever I hold a thermal imager on a ghost hunt and I see people, I always think that I'm in the movie Predator. So there's a little bit of disclosure there, kind of a little bit of a boy in a toy shop, basically. But the thermal imager, aside from that side of things, is a fascinating piece of kit, because actually it's picking up on temperature. Really, that's what it is. And it's probably the most sensitive way of picking up on temperature, because it's picking up on body temperature, but also relative temperature around the person as well. So that if somebody says, oh, there's a sudden drop in temperature here where my hand is, at least you can get a sense of, is that really the case, or are you imagining it? So I think of it as a very useful piece of kit for that. However, proper thermal imagers, although they're cheaper than they were about 20 years ago, are still a little bit pricey for the amateur ghost hunter. And I would say actually one of the best pieces of equipment is that. That's probably one of the best pieces of equipment, and us basically, because we go into ghost hunting venues, into haunted locations, because people have had experiences. They haven't had experiences holding a thermal imager or, you know, a particular piece of equipment. They have just had experiences themselves. So if anything, we are the best detectors of ghosts. There you go.
Do you feel the best experiences we have are our own personal ones rather than those caught on camera or EVP?
Yeah, that's a good question, John. It kind of follows up what I was just saying, that I think we are the best. If what we're doing is trying to detect ghosts, the evidence from people's own personal experiences is what draws us into the field, what draws us into haunted locations. And it's because of that that we are effectively the best detectors of it. You know, all we can do with the equipment is have an objective measure that somebody, when they say, I feel cold, they are genuinely colder. Or if they say, I can hear a sound, with a recording piece of equipment, we may be able to hear that sound too. But actually, the personal experience of going, doesn't feel right in here, or I feel like there's somebody behind me, all of those sorts of kind of subjective, very personal experiences, that's the stuff that really gets us into ghost hunting and really gets us trying to find the evidence. So yeah, I 100% agree with you, John, that actually the best experiences are your own personal ones. They don't necessarily stand up to scrutiny by parapsychologists or by psychologists, although we'll leave them aside, but they don't stand up to scrutiny, but they are by far the best ones. Yeah.
Another one here from Alex. We love to use technology. What's Ciaran's best potential paranormal evidence from using technology, and any piece of equipment that he finds most interesting, which I think you've just answered that.
Yes. Although it's a great question, Alex from UK Haunted. That's a great question, because the thermal imager actually picked up one of the best pieces of evidence that I've seen. There's a few that other people have presented me with that I'm very impressed with also, but actually an investigation of a haunted nightclub in Birkenhead that was down, and I was there with Parascience, investigating the location, and all of the staff that were involved in an original seance that appeared to kick off the phenomena were there that particular evening. And we'd been investigating the place for about 18 months. I was looking at it through a thermal imager. So I was looking at a seance that they were conducting, kind of replicating what had happened all those years ago when they did a seance and stuff started to kick off in the location. Filming it with a thermal imager, not for TV or anything, just for private investigation. And actually, the interesting thing was the people around the table at 20, 30 minutes, there's nothing happening here. We just don't feel that anything's happening. And what I was seeing was on the sides of the screen of the thermal imager, effectively the sides of the room, there was a fog of cold that was approaching them. And I had it set to black and white, which meant that if there was a drop in temperature anywhere, it would instantly show in green. So it's very, 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 very good setting to have. And it was like this green fog was approaching the seance table. And then as it approached the seance table and kind of appeared to kind of wrap itself around them, the people around the table said, it feels like the energy is building. It feels like we're getting something now. And then they conducted a seance for about 30, 40 minutes. They had a glass on the table and that appeared to work. And even though I'm skeptical of that, I still carried on observing what was going on. And at the point where this green fog, this drop in temperature, appeared to almost dissipate and kind of move away from the table, a couple of people on the table were saying, it feels like the energy's just gone now. It feels like whatever was here has gone. Now, that for me was fascinating because you had a personal subjective interpretation. People were saying there's energy, there's something here, it feels different. And actually, what I was picking up was an objective scientific measure, which was a drop in temperature that I still can't explain. We had data loggers, small data loggers for some of the career ghost hunters out there who used to use these kind of USB data loggers that you had about 15 plus years ago. We had those dotted around at various points at kind of window openings and door openings, and there was no drop in temperature. It wasn't like a breeze had come in. So that's one of the best phenomena. But aside from that, countless times I've been presented with fascinating video and photography evidence. And I think that's also a brilliant way of keeping a record of what's going on. So yes, thank you for that.
Okay, next question for you.
Yeah.
If I'm interrogating you, we do apologize.
Oh, no, not at all. I love it.
What do you personally think happens to us when we die?
Oh, I'll tell you when I die. Because how do I know? No, I'm being.
It literally did.
Sorry.
Dennis said to me, "You were a bit slow there, weren't it?" It literally took me a minute to realise what you said.
It's me being a bit flippant, but I'm being genuine in the answer as well, because I think it's down to belief. I really do. It's not for me as a scientist to say what happens after we die, because science doesn't know. Science basically says we die and that's it. There's nothing else. But, whilst we have the evidence for our perspective, when people believe in an afterlife, they believe in whatever religion it is, or they believe in heaven, or our information goes to an Akashic library, or whatever the belief system is, that's a belief. And there's nothing I can say as a scientist. It would be arrogant of me to dismiss those beliefs. So that's why I kind of flippantly say, well, I'll tell you when I die. It's down to your own personal beliefs.
The only information we really got to go on that is the ones who have, say, near-death experiences, who come out of it the other end and then explain what they've gone through.
Yeah, but even the fascinating thing about some of the near-death experience, and I've been so lucky in terms of my parapsychology career to be able to be in rooms speaking to people like Sam Parnia, who's a near-death experience researcher who did some research at Southampton Hospital and now over in New York. Raymond Moody done some near-death experience research, and you've got the same situation with ghosts. These researchers going, the evidence for near-death experience coming from these people who are giving these accounts are about the tunnels, the light at the end of the tunnel, that warmth kind of drawing you to the light, maybe encountering people that have passed over, that sort of thing, kind of that evidential stuff for the person. And then you get scientists going, yes, but there's a lot going on in our brain, and actually as we kind of die, our eyes close in, and that can create the tunnel effect. And there's kind of a release of particular chemicals that make us very warm, relaxed, all of those sorts of features which feature in near-death experiences. So absolutely, you're right, Dennis. There's the same. It's better evidence, and it's held up to be better evidence in terms of near-death experience research. But there's the same argument going on between those that believe it's evidence of the afterlife and scientists who say, well, we think we have a good explanation for it. So
Cool.
Good point, though. Lovely.
Okay, next question. Aaron wants to know, in your opinion, has the TV media frenzy of ghost hunting been harmful to the world of investigating, or has it had more of a positive effect?
The answer to that is yes. Both. 100% both. 100%. And here's the reason why. And I got asked this when I was on Most Haunted back in the day. And remember, the last time I was on Most Haunted was 2010. So that is a decade ago. That was the last time I was on Most Haunted. That was, so 2010, it was Prague in the Czech Republic. So I was asked about it even then, and my answer was still the same even then. The answer is yes. And the reason why is because the positive is this. The positive is us being in this situation now, of me being able to talk to you, of, hundreds of people, thousands of people, Festival of the Unexplained over the next 2 days, listening to any number of people from across the world talk about their experiences and talk about their views on the paranormal and their areas of expertise, and all of the people listening going out and ghost hunting and doing their own thing on a regular basis. That's the positive effect, that the media has had an influence and people have gone, well, I see what's going on screen. You know what? I could go and do that. I can sign up to a group, or I can go and get a torch and I can go and find a haunted location. So that is a hugely positive effect, and I think we cannot take that away from paranormal media, that it has had an influence. It's opened up the discussions, it's opened up the debates. So that is a good thing. I think the other good thing is that by people doing that, they then turn back to the paranormal media and go, that's rubbish, isn't it? That's not real. You know, I do my ghost hunts and I do hundreds of them, you know, and does that stuff happen? It just doesn't happen. You don't just walk into a place and boom, 100 things start being thrown at you and people faint and everything like that. You know, you can often sit in a haunted location for hours and it's like watching paint dry. You know, so that's the positive. People having their own experiences, making up their own minds, being critical of what they see on the television. I think all of that is a good thing. The hugely negative thing is related in that, unfortunately, when people are watching what happened, they see that as the way that they should do things. And I think that is a danger, especially when it comes to the world of para ethics. You know, when you have various shows doing particular styles of investigating and people think that that is the way that you should do it, and I think that is having a harmful effect, has always had a harmful effect, and is still, and maybe more so now, because there's the explosion of media across channels, Netflix, you name it, across wherever, YouTube. When people are doing investigations, people are copying that style. And of course, the other harmful effect, which actually was called the most haunted effect back in 2008. I think that expression first came up. The negative influence is when locations go on to television, they then are in a situation to be able to charge groups to go and investigate. And that's a negative, because it means that some locations are not affordable by small ghost hunting groups. And I think that is a huge shame. That is a real shame. And if anything, to use a trendy word at the moment, I would advocate for a tier level pricing, where you've almost got a pricing for small amateur groups that say, look, I would like to do this, a price for them versus, a company that does public ghost hunts, or, that sort of thing, kind of a difference in pricing, because a lot of the fabulous locations small ghost groups are not able to go into. And then unfortunately the way that then you can do it, which I know you guys and a lot of people watching have to do, is you kind of have to be able to afford the fee that's being charged by bringing in other people into the location, and then you're bringing in unknown people into a location. There's the kind of control on that respect. So it's tough. So yeah, the long-winded answer. Sorry, I went on a bit.
All right.
Positive and negative. So the answer is yes.
Well, we tend to do team shares, so that's how we get around some of the more expensive locations. We get a few teams to get. We get a few teams together and share it between us to cover the cost, basically.
That's a very clever way of doing it.
More expensive places. Otherwise, we won't be able to do them, like you said.
Very clever way of doing it. Everybody hear that? That's a brilliant way of doing it. Yeah, very good.
Another question from Mrs. Holiday. Do you believe there are angels and demons, or just good and bad spirits?
Again, you're asking a question, and it's a great question because it taps into my area of interest. I've just put the discount on there for you. It taps into my area of interest, which is religious parapsychology. I'm fascinated by angels and demons. Very few people know, but I am actually a qualified demonologist. You wouldn't think it. It doesn't mean that I go into a location and I go, oh, look, there's the devil, or, there's Beelzebub. That's not what a demonologist is. A demonologist is actually somebody that has an encyclopedic knowledge of demon hierarchies, demon classification systems. It's an academic position. is actually not what North America would have us believe, and a few individuals in the UK as well. So I'm fascinated by it. Do I believe in it? It's not about belief for me. I'm fascinated by it. I know about all of the reasons why some of these kind of demon classification systems started, why people started to kind of interpret various phenomena as being the presence of demons. So I know about kind of the natural explanations of things. So from my perspective as a scientist, there is more evidence to talk about angels and demons in kind of mythology and kind of natural terms, rather than actually anything to do with kind of actually kind of actual demons or angels. But in terms of good bad spirits, if you believe there are such things as spirits, and there'll be people that have different beliefs in this, there are good and bad people on earth. There are good and bad living people. So what happens when they die? You know, if there's any truth to it or evidence to it, then there's logic there to say yes, there's going to be good and bad.
Oh, Ciaran's going on there as well with what are your views on demons, which seem to be so prevalent in so many investigations nowadays? Thought of this question when you talked about Christian parapsychology to religious parapsychology. One person's demon is another person's ghost.
Yes, absolutely. No, 100%. You've hit the nail on the head. Oh, I'm actually using a phrase that Haunted Scouts is using. So yeah, you've hit the nail on the head. It's about interpretation. And I flashed up one of my articles in my presentation, which is about haunted people syndrome condition. It's just basically saying what a number of people have said over the last 20, 30 years, that actually maybe another way of looking at the paranormal is saying, if you have a particular experience, is that a ghost? Is it a demon? Is it an alien? Is it a goblin? Who, you know, all of this is out for conjecture. So that's only one particular theory to say maybe one person's demon is another person's ghost, is another person's alien. You know, it's all of that. And I think that's a fascinating way to look at it. In answer to the first part of the question, I think it's dangerous. I think we, as you know, the UK has kind of avoided the demonology side of things. Like I said, there are a few individuals and a couple of groups that maybe are leaning more towards that side. North America is saturated with the demonology approach to hauntings. You find so many investigations where people start talking about demons and kind of the evil and bad side of hauntings. And I think a lot of that, again, is down to media influence. You know, I don't mind mentioning the fact that Ghost Adventurers is one of the most influential shows on television, and Ghost Adventurers has a demonic and kind of negative theme to it, you know. So I think that is one of the reasons. But also there are some very charismatic individuals in North America who are demonologists and or exorcists, and who put themselves forward kind of interpreting phenomena as being the presence of demons. So yeah, good question, Ciaran.
Haunted Scout says, does Ciaran believe that the more ghost hunts that take place in locations, the more activity is diluted, or does the energy of the people keep the hauntings alive?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Haunted Scout, and I've got some experience of that with Wimmering Manor in Portsmouth, which is coincidentally the location where I met my wife on a ghost hunt. Wimmering Manor, for those that know kind of the UK ghost map, I would say about.
Sorry, Ciaran, we lost you then for a moment. You where you met your wife, and then we lost you.
I see.
Sorry.
It's quite easy to do that. Where I met my wife at Wimmering Manor, and for people that know the UK ghost map, Wimmering Manor, wow, I guess about a decade ago, was investigated every times a week, and it reached a point, I think, in about 2011, 2012, where a lot of ghost groups were saying it literally had been ghost hunted to death, to the point where it was almost as though the energy had been sucked out of it and things just weren't happening. there was a hiatus point where it stopped being investigated, and part of that was because of issues of ownership of the property and various things. And then after a few years, people went back into the location. It felt like the energy had come back. So if you believe in that sort of thing, then I think, yes, I think it is possible. If you believe that there are spirits actually listening to people, location, and say, if there's anybody there, make a noise, or if there's anybody there, knock. And if they're doing it every time somebody says that, think about yourself every Friday, Saturday night. If you're hearing somebody say that, and every time they say it, you're going, here's a knock. Here you go, after weeks and weeks and months. So there is, I think there's a potential logic to what Haunted Scouse is saying. So good question. Thank you.
Oh. Steve Higgins said, haha, yes, that's true. It was a closed question. Philip was saying, hi, Ciaran, have you ever witnessed a full-bodied apparition? And where is your two questions. And where is your favourite location in terms of investigation and activity?
Really good question. Both questions. The first one about full-bodied apparition, no. I've never witnessed a full-bodied apparition. I have seen photographic evidence, and there are some brilliant ones, so people will know. The Lady of Raynham Hall, for example, is a classic photo, and also the apparition that was caught on the Tulip Staircase in Greenwich in the Maritime Museum. Those are two classics which I love. But I've never seen one myself, the holy grail of haunting experiences. The second question is about favourite locations in terms of investigation and activity. Wow. Because that's very tough, because I think there are 2 points there. My favourite location would be Hampton Court Palace, because of a location where you've got written accounts of people having experiences going back 300 years. And you've got the actual records of people having those experiences. So in terms of a location, fantastic location, and various parts to it as well, where there's different sorts of experiences that are had. So yes, Hampton Court Palace in terms of investigation. In terms of another place, actually, is Guernsey. So Second World War underground Nazi bunker in Guernsey called Battery Myris is a particular favourite. For just sheer, I guess is the best way of putting it, and also the number of experiences that people have had there. My wife hates the location, and the last one that I will say is on my to-do list, my dream list, which is Bokor Hill Station, Bokor, Bokor Hill Station in Cambodia. That is on my top 5 locations that I have never investigated that I would always want to investigate. So there you go. Thanks, Philip.
Okay.
Well, we've got an interesting question here from Lorien. Are you more of a believer at the start of your power journey than you are now?
That's a very good question.
That is a good question.
That's a really good question, because I'd have to think about, where did my para journey start? If I talk about my para journey as being a boy and then a teenager, I was only just a teenager when Ghostbusters came out. That'll show how old I am. So with that, at that age, I was more of a believer, 100% as a teenager. But very quickly, in researching parapsychology, even as a teenager, even to 16, 17, 18, I started to become more skeptical and kind of was more into kind of the scientific side of things. And then doing ghost hunting for all these decades, and actually from the point where kind of around 2000, so the last 20 years, the number of ghost investigations that I was involved with just kind of went exponentially up, especially with Most Haunted and all the various other shows. And because of that, it means I've got thousands and thousands of ghost hunts that I've done now. That hasn't made me more of a believer. If anything, it's made me more understanding, sympathetic to people that have the experiences, in terms of kind of really knowing where they're coming from. But also, it's made me more of an arse when I speak to other academics and other scientists, and they go, "All of this ghost stuff is bollocks." I am
Apologies
just
to any children watching.
yeah. Sorry, I do apologise. 4 p.m. I do apologise for
That's all right.
my language, but no, it has made me more serious and aggressive when I hear academics and scientists saying there's nothing to this ghost stuff, it's all people hallucinating or frauds. I'm more sympathetic and understanding, and I will just say people have these experiences. It doesn't matter the age, the gender, the race, the socioeconomic status, the educational background, the professional standing, the occupation, doesn't matter. People have these experiences, and you cannot just say it's just down to hallucination or fraud. There is something going on, and it's down. If anything, there's a responsibility on scientists to try and understand what it is, whether it's paranormal or not. So yeah, thank you for that. I do apologise.
Hi, Ciaran. Have you witnessed a transfiguration from
Yes.
Rachel?
Yes, Rachel, I have. Actually, the first transfiguration I witnessed was a facial transfiguration, which was on Jane Goldman Investigates. Actually, one of the first investigations I conducted with Jane Goldman, we had two people sit opposite each other, and there was an attempt by the medium to create transfiguration on their face. And I know about the psychological principles behind it, that when you're in a low lit room and you are focusing and you're keeping your eyes open, that actually there's stuff that happens with your eyeball that can create what appears to be kind of an older face. It's the same sort of principle that when you're doing scrying, when you're looking into a mirror and it's low level light or candle light, there's kind of a smearing effect that happens with your eyes, and it creates kind of this older, kind of distorts the face in some way. So yes, I have, and that was the first time. In terms of full body transfiguration, no, I haven't seen that, but certainly facial ones I have. That's a good question. Thank you for that.
One. Yeah.
Someone called Eddie has asked, what is the most...
Someone called Eddie. He means my husband, basically, Ciaran.
Okay.
the most compelling evidence of paranormal activity that you have witnessed, and where was it?
The most compelling, did you say?
Yeah, the most compelling evidence of paranormal activity that you have witnessed, and where was it?
Okay, well, aside from the account that I gave about that thermal imaging footage at the nightclub in Birkenhead, I guess the other compelling evidence, I see a lot of compelling evidence, I'll be honest, a lot, from a lot of different locations. Hampton Court Palace, Eastern State Penitentiary was a classic for that. West Virginia State Penitentiary also, that was a wonderful location. There's been a few in this country as well. Avenue House, for example, is a great location in Finchley in London. A lot of people having very compelling evidence. I think the question you're asking is more in terms of personal. Have I seen any compelling evidence? My wife and I actually visited that bunker that I was talking about, just the two of us. So there was nobody else in the location. We got the keys. We know the owner. We got the keys. Went and locked ourselves in there. And she hates the place, so she didn't go in. She sat in the outside area, for anybody that knows it, so didn't actually go in. We were locked in, but she was kind of in an outside area behind the gates, and I went off into the location, and I was filming, kind of more for myself in terms of keeping a record, should anything happen, and talking whilst I was doing it. And then at some point I could hear her shout out, "Ciaran," like really shout out, obviously distressed, and I ran back to her, and she was just completely shaken up. And I asked what happened, and she'd been sat there and she heard footsteps returning to her that she thought was me, and the footsteps returned to her, and then they had that sliding effect, if somebody stops and slides in gravel, and they stopped, and she went, "Ciaran, Ciaran," and then she looked around the corner, there was nobody there. She looked further around the corner, there was nobody there, and that's when she screamed out, and that's when I ran from the other side of the bunker, and it took me fair few minutes to get back, for me to get back, and she went, "Yeah, I don't know what that was." Now for me, that's the sort of compelling evidence I try implicitly, but it's the sort of thing that highlights your the evidence that you get in a location where somebody talks about something that shakes them up. So, yeah, that's one.
Okay.
Jane's asked, what are your thoughts on the SLS camera?
Yeah, I've used the SLS camera on a number of locations. I've used it with Tim Brown from PIGS Paranormal Investigation Group Sussex, and I've used the SLS camera there. My issue with it is that it has not made for ghost hunting. We use it for ghost hunting, but actually the SLS camera has been used for something entirely different, which is effectively kind of the gaming community. You know, it's in a situation. Is this right? The SLS camera is the one where it's about the stick figures. Is that the one?
Yeah.
Am I thinking of the right thing? Yeah. So that was developed specifically for gaming, to be, you know, a camera that picks up on a figure and superimposes a stick figure on you. And whilst I think it's a great progression in terms of trying to understand what it is in a room and trying to capture evidence, my concern is, and the technicalities of it, and there's a report that I could share on my social media about somebody that's involved in the technical development of that camera, says, well, if you put that camera in a room, it will try and find and superimpose stick figures on something that it thinks human about detecting ghosts. It's about the camera interpreting anything. So in a location, I'm trying to think where it was, Mitchell and Priory, SLS camera, it had picked up on a stick figure in a room. We had somebody go in, they were putting their hand out, which you see a lot in some of the footage, and they almost like they were interacting with the stick figure. And I noted what sort of, they said, well, there's nothing here, but a little bit further back, there's a chair. And I said, okay, can you now move the chair? So they moved the chair, stick figure wasn't there. They went out of the room, we put the chair back, the stick figure came. So it's about the camera kind of interpreting. At least that's my perspective, having looked at the question. Thanks, Jane.
Okay. Gaynor wants to know, we've got so many questions to get through, and
I know, loads.
Gaynor wants to know, where's the best place to study parapsychology?
It's a very good question. There's nowhere you can actually do certificates. I think Jane Harris does some courses, and some brilliant courses. Ask her, because she's on Festival of the Unexplained later, so she does some fantastic courses, I understand.
Yes,
I do a
PhD website.
There you go, brilliant. So yeah, I do a couple of courses as well. Institute of Parasychology, so the Ryan Research Center over in North Carolina. Lloyd Auerbach does some courses as well, so definitely those. Can I repeat the website address for my course? theschoolofparapsychology.equid.com. I'll put it on my social media stuff, because I can't chat.
Send me the link, then we'll put it in the comments for everybody also.
Okay, fabulous. I'll do that.
Couple more last questions. Have you investigated? I can't get my words out. Have you investigated 50 Berkeley Square?
No, I haven't. No, Mark. No, I haven't. And I think the main reason why I haven't, so 50 Berkeley Square, if you look back in the archives of the Society for Psychical Research, which is an old organisation which has existed since 1882, they talk about 50 Berkeley Square as being kind of a fantastic location. It's still a residential property. You can't get in there, so unfortunately not. But yes, would love to. Steve, if I had some substances that would keep me awake for 35 hours, then I would love to.
I had to put that one on.
Thanks for that.
Yeah. I apologize to everybody that's have so many more questions for you. We needed 2 hours for you, Ciaran.
Very kind.
So what? Well, obviously we're going to have you back at some point and talk to you again on
yes, love to.
other platforms.
Absolutely.
Okay, so go on. Christopher Hall, so are you still in let me put up. Are you still in contact with medium David Wells? You and him seemingly had a strong rapport, an intelligent exchange of different views and experiences.
Well, Christopher, Are you psychic? Because I spoke to David Wells today. So yes, the answer is yes. I did actually speak to David Wells today. We were chatting about Halloween and Hever Castle and various things. I do keep in contact with him, although we have differences of opinion about his mediumship. I have a lot of respect for the man, and we have become good friends, but a lot of respect for him in terms of the journey that he took to understand his mediumship. So yes, good question.
Just some comments of thanks in before we go. This was great, Dr. Ciaran O'Keeffee. Enjoyed this as someone who really got drawn into this field watching you on MH. Hope you feel better soon, mate. On to Scouser.
Thank you very much. Lovely.
Francis, I totally agree with Ciaran regarding the SLS. I think the camera also interrupts reflections and light.
Yep, good point.
Dana, who asked about courses, says thanks. Kelly Kennedy says you're fabulous. Lauren says, feel better, Ciaran. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Christopher Halter, yes, I am psychic, I knew. And Rose, great and very interesting talk. Thank you. Amanda, thanks. So interesting.
Thanks,
Ray,
Amanda.
thank you. Can't wait to read more about your work.
Fab.
And what we didn't get a chance to mention was your book.
Yes. Oh, well, I've got loads of books. So I've got an ethics book. I've got a book that's coming out at the beginning of 2020, Global Ghost Gang. So yeah, a book coming out at the beginning of 2021. I'll be shouting about it on my social media account. It's a book written by scientists involved in this field, but written in very approachable language, and it's about the science written for ghost hunters and the public. So yeah, look out for that. And also my para ethics book, which will hopefully be out around the same time.
And if anybody missed it, Ciaran was on the front cover of the Haunted magazine last issue. You can still get a copy. But we'll say thank you very much, Ciaran. We do appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming on and talking to us today and answering everybody's questions. And if you just stay there, we'll be with you in just a moment. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Please stay where you are and join Jolene next as she talks to producer Laura Marini, where you get to ask her questions about the production process of all these different TV shows and so on. Yeah, again, thank you, Ciaran, and thank you, everybody else. Much appreciated.
Thank you.